Hello, I'm Meg Blanchard from NC State.
And I'm Christy Gutierrez from Old Dominion University.
And today we're going to talk to you about an upcoming book chapter that we have called Preparing Teachers to Enhance the Potential of After-School STEM Clubs for Rural Students. Our co-author, Kylie Swanson, couldn't join us today. This chapter will appear in the International Handbook of Research on Multicultural Science Education, and the lead editor is Mary Atwater. The focus of our chapter is the teacher professional development that was intended to develop the teacher-coach's multicultural education competency and to prepare them to work with diverse middle school students located in rural North Carolina. We wanted to promote academic achievement for all of the students and to use culturally competent pedagogical strategies to help make the learning meaningful for these students.
So North Carolina is a long way from Australia. On this next map of NC State is actually right in the middle of the state. However, each of the 4 schools who we worked with are actually about 1 to 2 hours away in rural areas of North Carolina. So the model for teacher professional development, at each school site, the principal and teachers decided on a teacher coach team of about 6 individuals at each of the 4 schools. And that teacher team then came to one of the 4 schools, and it rotated each time, to one of the 4 schools throughout the year on a Saturday. And they actually did a teacher professional development that was facilitated by our research team. And they would then go through 3 activities that they were learning about the content and how to do the activities, and they would run through that. And so they would then go back to their schools and do the activities with their students in after-school STEM clubs. And they would do that 4 times a year, so they'd have a total of 12 activities that they would actually do with students in STEM clubs at each of their schools. However, as you can see, we may have had one activity that would have been shown at the teacher professional development maybe a month or a month and a half before they actually taught it with their STEM club. So we found that actually having a pre-club meeting in the week prior to the student club actually helped the teachers to kind of refocus, make sure they had all their materials together, make sure they knew who was going to do what prior to actually having the club meetings. So there were 12 club meetings for the students throughout the academic school year. Now, the teacher coaches, they talk through approaches during these professional development sessions to help address the beliefs based on cultural differences. We had a fairly diverse group of teachers. However, for looking at the students, there were even so cultural differences related to race and ethnicity and socioeconomic status, achievement levels, and even generational differences between the students, and looking at the youth culture within the students and the teacher coaches who were leaders of the club.
So during the pre-club meeting, teachers would meet like this in a classroom, and you can see that this group sort of looks like they're clowning around, right? And what they would do is they'd look through, okay, what's the activity we're doing at the club? Who's in charge of what? And it would include things like who's going to line up the snack and who's going to arrange for a video setup for a guest to come in and talk to the students, or who's going to lay out the supplies. And the goal was that in spending this time together, they not only would review what they were going to do during the club meeting, but they would have time to build a community of practice with each other. So the community of practice was a framework that we used to guide our analysis of the interactions of the teachers working together. And this was kind of novel, and we hadn't actually thought about it that much ahead of time, but it's unusual for teachers to do professional development and then to carry out what they've learned in the professional development together. So these teachers weren't going back to individual classrooms, they were doing club meetings where sometimes they were all in one large room together. And it was a really different dynamic than what happens with a lot of professional development. Therefore, it became a fascinating enough topic that Kylie Swanson actually focused her dissertation research on all of the interactions of these teachers. And so a community of practice development includes a domain, practice, and community. And these were operationalized through the STEM Club project with the teachers carrying out the STEM Club at their schools. And then the teacher coach teams working closely together as a community, both during the professional development and also when they were carrying out the club activities and the pre-club refresher session at their schools. We encouraged the teachers both during the professional development and when they were back at their schools during the pre-club meeting to try and make the activities their own, to think of, were there local examples they could reference? Were there things they thought that their students might be particularly interested in? Or did they have things that they were familiar with that they could add to an activity? So although the framework was very similar across the different club meetings, we wanted them to make the clubs as relevant to their students as possible.
So the core features of informal STEM programs were that club meetings be highly engaging and interesting because, again, after school STEM clubs are non-compulsory. Students choose to attend or not. That they promote active participation, a lot of hands-on learning. That they encourage creativity throughout the activities that they do within the STEM program. And that the students are then challenged without the threat of grades, without the worry of high stakes testing at the end of the activities. And then also, of course, we did want to promote learning in STEM areas as well. Overall, teacher coaches, they gain confidence in teaching, they increase their self-efficacy in STEM, and interestingly, in none of the 4 club teams were all the teachers STEM subject areas experts. We had some teachers were foreign language teachers, some were history teachers, some were librarians. So not all teachers were well versed in STEM areas. However, we did see an increase in self-efficacy in STEM areas. Additionally, we saw increased technological and pedagogical content knowledge. The teachers became slightly more student-centered in their beliefs about what was happening. And then also, we saw an enhanced professional teamwork skills as leaders, as they were leading within their clubs, within the teacher coaches themselves, and also leading their students and students' families through this experience. Attendance at the teacher professional development really did impact what happened at the pre-club meetings. So if you had a team where all 6 teachers attended the teacher professional development, when they came to the pre-club meetings, it was the teachers did not have to actually go in and go through the activities and actually teach their peers, the other teacher coaches who didn't attend the professional development. And so they were able to spend a lot more time really digging in and coming up with plans, the nuts and bolts of the club meetings. And those are really stronger clubs that we saw when the teachers actually did all or most come to the teacher professional development. If you had some clubs or some teacher teams who you only had a small percentage, they had to then go back, those who attended, and teach the other members of their team, and their clubs just did not run as smoothly and were not quite as successful. This is actually the Dimensions of Success observation tool. And this is an instrument that was used by our research team to look at the effectiveness of the clubs. And as you can see, there are 12 dimensions listed throughout this particular tool. And we really found out that the teacher coach teams developed stronger communities. So those who had, you know, a stronger community actually did rate higher on the measurements within these 12 dimensions.
We asked teachers to reflect each year on how the club was going, any feedback they had, and it was very, very open-ended. We wanted to get forthright reflections from them about how they thought the club was going and what they were getting out of it, what the students were getting out of it. So the teachers talked about increases in their STEM content learning, increases in the student STEM content learning and their engagement during the clubs. They talked about an increase in the STEM career connections that they were able to make as a result of what they had learned about in the clubs, and shifts in their pedagogy. For example, integrating group work into what they did in classrooms. They also talked about increases in non-technical skills, teamwork and communication, which was focused around the students, but also they commented on their own interactions as a part of that after-school club and teacher professional development with the other teacher coaches. Another theme was the infusion of STEM Career Club activities and pedagogical approaches that they were integrating into their traditional school day. A lot of them use some of the kits and they use the materials in order to bring some of these stimulating activities to their mathematics classes, to their science classrooms, and other activities during the school day. They talked a lot about improved relationships with the other teacher coaches, with the students in the club, and with the families of the students. There was a theme of overcoming deficit perception of the students. Many of them talked about how they were surprised and pleased at how much students were able to accomplish during the clubs. They had positive affective changes that they discussed: happiness, excitement, confidence as a result of their involvement in the clubs. And overall, there were a lot of positive changes that were discussed in terms of their attitudes toward teaching and how this had positively impacted their professional lives. We look forward to this chapter being completed. We think the book is going to be coming out in 2020, and this is just one of many chapters related to multicultural education that we think will be a wonderful asset to our community. We want to thank the National Science Foundation for their funding. We had a huge number of partners in our teachers and students and families, large number of graduate students and colleagues that were involved in this project. And we have assembled all sorts of links related to STEM careers that are available on this website. So please do take advantage of it, and thank you so much.